Commander John "Hawk" Hawkins stood alone, overlooking the sprawling docks of the Galactic Alliance's starbase. The vast expanse of space stretched out beyond, dotted with starships that glinted like diamonds against the black velvet of the cosmos. His gaze fixed on the newest addition to the fleet, a behemoth that dwarfed the others in both size and firepower. Around him the starbase buzzed with activity. Alien soldiers from myriad worlds chattered in a cacophony of foreign tongues, their words a blend of clicks, whistles, and deep, resonant tones. Their armor clanked softly as they moved, a stark contrast to the silent, smooth fabric of Hawk's Earth-made uniform. Hawk's presence went unnoticed, or perhaps deliberately ignored. To the galactic soldiers he was an oddity, an archaic remnant of a primitive planet's attempt at defense. They whispered not of gunpowder or sharp rocks, but of Earth's quaint reliance on strategy over brute force, a concept as alien to them as peace. But Hawk wasn't there to win a popularity contest. He was there because the Galactic Alliance, in their arrogance, had underestimated a looming threat, one that required not just advanced technology, but cunning and guile, qualities Hawk had in spades. As he turned away from the viewport, a towering figure approached him. General Vark, a broad-shouldered Brutan with skin that shimmered like molten silver under the artificial light, stopped a few paces away. His voice, when he spoke, carried an undertone of begrudging respect. "Commander Hawkins, your file speaks highly of your accomplishments. Quite extraordinary for an Earthling." Hawk met the general's gaze, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, General. I find that underestimation often provides a strategic advantage." Vark's thin lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Indeed. Let us hope your talents prove as effective as rumored. The Council is watching, and they are skeptical." "I'm used to skepticism, sir. It's skepticism that lets me do my job without interference," Hawk replied, the corners of his eyes crinkling slightly. A distant roar of ship engines launching into the void broke their brief moment of understanding. Hawk looked over his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges ahead. "Walk with me, Commander," Vark said, turning on his heel. "Let's discuss your role in the upcoming operation." As they walked through the steel corridors, Hawk's steps were silent, his mind already racing with plans and possibilities. Each whispered doubt from passing soldiers only sharpened his focus. They might laugh now, but Hawk was no stranger to proving doubters wrong. In the cold, vast frontier of space, it wasn't the loudest or the most luminous that survived. It was the smartest. And as Earth's finest, Hawk was determined to remind the galaxy just how deadly a quiet storm could be. General Vark led Commander John "Hawk" Hawkins into a stark briefing room, its walls lined with screens displaying various sectors of the galaxy. The room was chilly, the air tinged with a faint metallic scent, a stark reminder of the unyielding nature of space itself. "As you are aware, Commander," Vark began, activating a hologram of a densely clustered star system, "our objective lies in the Crillian sector." His finger traced a path through the stars, stopping at a planet swathed in swirling clouds. "Intelligence reports suggest that the Zyrek insurgents have established a hidden base here. Their raids have been crippling our supply lines." Hawk nodded, studying the hologram intently. "Terrain analysis?" he asked, his voice steady and clear. Vark swiped through the data, bringing up topographic maps that painted a picture of jagged mountains and deep valleys. "Difficult terrain. Ideal for your skills, we believe." Hawk leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed every detail. "We'll need to insert under cover of darkness. Stealth will be our ally." His hand hovered over a valley that snaked through the mountain like a dark vein. "Here, we can use the natural formations to mask our approach." The room's lighting shifted slightly as another officer entered, a lean figure who regarded Hawk with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Lieutenant Harrow," Vark introduced. "He'll be your liaison with our tactical units." Harrow's handshake was firm, his grip lingering just a moment too long. "I've heard Earth strategies are unconventional," he said, his tone measured. "Unconventional can win wars," Hawk replied, his gaze unwavering. They settled around a table as Harrow distributed tablets filled with mission specifics. The screens lit their faces with a soft glow, casting long shadows across the room. "Your team will be small," Harrow continued, outlining the formation. "A nimble unit can navigate the terrain without drawing attention." Hawk touched the screen, zooming in on an area marked as heavily fortified. "What's their air support like?" "Minimal, but heavily armed," Harrow responded, tapping into another file that detailed the enemy crafts. "Noiseless ion thrusters, no roaring jets. Their tech is advanced but not infallible." "Good. We'll use that," Hawk mused, his mind racing through scenarios. The faint clink of their mugs as they drank was a grounding counterpoint to the high stakes of their planning. As the meeting drew to a close, Hawk's senses were overwhelmed with the scent of strong coffee mingling with the sterile air, a blend of earthiness and artificiality that somehow fit their situation perfectly. The weight of the tablet in his hands felt solid, reassuring. "We'll reconvene at 0600. Finalize your preparations," Vark said, standing to signify the end. Hawk's stride back to his quarters was purposeful, each step echoing slightly in the empty corridor. The taste of the mission was already on his tongue, bitter like his coffee, yet invigorating. In the solitude of his room, the strategy began to take shape, as palpable as the cold metallic walls that surrounded him. Commander John Hawkins' boots thudded softly against the grated metal floor as he made his way to the launch bay. The atmosphere was thick with tension, palpable as the taste of iron in the air, left by the ever-present metallic tang of the starbase. The space was alive with the silent whispers of the crew, their glances slicing through the air like the sharp tang of citrus that lingered from the morning's rations. Hawk's arrival was like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through the room. He was acutely aware of the many eyes tracking his movements, their owners cloaked in an array of galactic uniforms. The faint light from the bay doors cast long shadows, painting Hawk as both part of this cosmic tableau and starkly apart from it. Lieutenant Harrow approached, his steps nearly noiseless against the din of low, cautious conversations. "Commander, the craft are prepped. Your team is ready to board." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Hawk replied, his voice a low growl that seemed to ride the undercurrent of murmuring engines. They moved towards the sleek shuttle that gleamed under the hangar's lights, like a blade waiting to be unsheathed. Inside the shuttle, the air was cooler, a welcome relief from the heat generated by the crowded bay. Hawk's team was a quartet of Earth's finest, each man a shadow in the dim lighting, their features carved from the same hard, desperate determination that shaped Hawk himself. As the shuttle doors sealed with a soft hiss, Hawk surveyed his team, their faces illuminated intermittently by the blinking console lights. "This isn't just another skirmish," he started, the weight of command settling over the cabin. "It's about proving our worth, not just as soldiers, but as vital chess pieces in a game the galaxy didn't believe we could play." Their ascent was silent, the shuttle slicing through the atmosphere, leaving the starbase and the doubts of many behind. The blackness of space enveloped them like a shroud, the stars beyond the porthole bright but cold in their distant watchfulness. Hawk's focus was razor-sharp, his senses attuned to the faintest shift in the shuttle's hum. The silence was a canvas, each subtle creak and sigh of the craft a stroke of color upon it. His team sat rigid, their bodies tight with anticipation, the air between them charged with the energy of impending battle. As they approached the drop zone, the faint crackle of the comm system broke their meditation. Harrow's voice filtered through, tinny yet clear. "Commander Hawkins, you are clear for the approach. Remember, stealth is your shield tonight." Hawk nodded, though Harrow could not see it. His reply was a mere whisper, a shadow of sound that felt like a promise. "Understood, Lieutenant. We'll make them believe." The shuttle coasted like a ghost through the cosmos, its trajectory a silent vow against the velvet tapestry of space. Hawk felt the familiar thrill of challenge, the taste of possibility bitter and sweet on his tongue, like dark chocolate melting in heat. It was the flavor of potential, of might be and would be, as they moved toward a night that could redefine the fate of Earth's place among the stars. As the shuttle descended into the shadows of the Krillian Mountains, the world outside morphed into a blur of gray and silver under the moon's ghostly glow. Frost formed on the inside of the shuttle's small windows, crystalline patterns creeping across the glass like silent, cold sentinels watching their progress. The chill in the shuttle deepened, seeping into the bones of the crew, a constant reminder of the stakes at play. Commander John Hawkins peered through the frost, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The terrain below was rugged, unforgiving, a mirror to the inner resolve of the team huddled inside the craft. Each man's breath hung in the air, visible puffs of life in the icy atmosphere. "Gear up," Hawk whispered, his voice barely above the sound of their controlled breaths. The team moved in perfect unison, the soft clinks of their equipment a muted symphony of readiness. They checked each other's gear, a silent language of nods and tight smiles passing between them, the camaraderie palpable yet unspoken. The shuttle touched down with a grace that belied its size, a whisper against the rough kiss of the mountainous ground. Outside the wind howled, a mournful wail that carried the sharp tang of pine and the earthy musk of wet soil, blending with the metallic hint of their weapons. Hawk was the first to step out, his boots sinking slightly into the moist earth. The ground was spongy, soaked with the recent rains, each step releasing a fresh scent of pine and mud. Above, the sky was a tapestry of black velvet, the stars obscured by sweeping clouds, their movement swift and silent as if fleeing from the scene below. "Form up." "Echo formation," Hawk ordered, his voice carrying clearly, each word sharp and precise. The men arranged themselves quickly, their movements a silent dance they had rehearsed 100 times over. Their journey to the insurgent base was a study in stealth and endurance. The mountain paths were narrow, bordered by steep drops that vanished into darkness. Hawk led them, his senses tuned to the night's every whisper. The cold bit at their faces, the wind's icy fingers like slaps against their skin, trying to turn them back. After an hour's trek, they paused at the edge of a clearing. Hawk raised his hand, halting the team with a single, silent gesture. His eyes scanned the darkness, searching for signs of the enemy. His ears picked up the distant rush of a waterfall, its roar a steady drum against the night's quiet. "There," Hawk murmured, pointing towards a faint glow against the mountainside. The base. The team crouched, hidden by the shadows, as they observed the entrance. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their steps lazy, unsuspecting. Hawk turned to his team, his face set, the lines around his eyes deepened by the moonlight. "This is it. We go silent, we go swift, in and out before they know what hit them." As they prepared to move, the wind shifted, bringing with it a change in the air, a hint of ozone, a promise of rain. It mingled with the adrenaline that surged through Hawk's veins, a storm brewing within as they moved towards their target. Tonight the galaxy would learn what Earth's forces could do, not through might, but through the shadows and whispers of the night. The night cloaked Hawk and his team as they edged closer to the insurgent base, their movements barely disturbing the wet underbrush. Leaves whispered underfoot, releasing a damp, earthy aroma that mingled with the sharpness of cold air. As they approached, the subtle glow from the base grew stronger, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the rough bark of the pine trees surrounding them. Hawk paused, signaling his team to drop to the ground as a guard approached the edge of the light's reach. The guard's breath formed clouds in the chilly air, and the soft murmur of his voice floated towards them as he checked in over his radio, his words too low to discern. Hawk felt the damp ground press against his chest, the soil cool and pliable beneath him, a stark contrast to the tension that tightened his muscles. The guard turned away, and Hawk gestured forward. They moved with a precision that turned their actions into mere flickers in the darkness, ghosting towards the base with a silence that belied the urgency pulsing in their veins. Each man was a shadow, less a person than a wisp of the night itself. As they reached the perimeter, Hawk scanned the area, his eyes adjusting to the mixed lighting. The base was cruder than expected, makeshift barricades and a haphazard fence that spoke of hurried construction rather than a permanent stronghold. The scent of burnt wood tinged the air, a remnant of a recent fire, perhaps used to forge metals or cook. "We split here," Hawk whispered, his voice barely a breath as he divided his team into pairs. "East and west wings. Look for intel. We meet back here in 20. Move out." The men nodded, each pair vanishing into the different directions with practiced stealth. Hawk and his partner, Sergeant Cole, headed towards what appeared to be the main building. Its door was ajar, creaking softly as the wind nudged it back and forth. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the odor of oil and sweat. Hawk's eyes quickly adjusted to the dim interior, where the vague outlines of crates and machinery loomed like dormant beasts. His steps were careful, mindful of any trap that might have been laid. They reached a terminal, its screen glowing faintly in the dark room. Cole's fingers danced across the interface with a deftness that was almost silent, pulling up files, scanning through the data. Hawk watched the door, his senses heightened, every shuffle or distant step outside tightening his grip on his weapon. "Sarge, you gotta see this," Cole murmured, his voice tense. Hawk moved over, his gaze falling on the screen where schematics and documents scrolled by. What caught his eye was a map, a series of coordinates that didn't match any known military or insurgent operations. "What is this?" Hawk's question was a low growl, more to himself than to Cole. "Don't know, sir, but it looks like they were planning something big, something off the books." Hawk's mind raced. This wasn't just a simple insurgent hideout. It was a node in a larger plan, perhaps something that could explain the aggressive movements in the Krillian sector. "Download everything. We need to get this back to command." His voice was a sharp command, a contrast to the whispering shadows they had become. As Cole worked, Hawk felt the weight of the discovery in his chest, a heavy pulsing beat like a drum of war that was only just beginning to sound. Whatever was coming, they were now on its precipice, staring down into the dark depths of a mystery that was far from solved. With the data secured, Hawk motioned to Cole, and they swiftly exited the dim confines of the building. The air outside felt fresher, a contrast to the stale, greasy atmosphere they had left behind. The moon, now a slender crescent, cast a silver sheen over the wet leaves, turning droplets of water into shimmering jewels that clung to the dark silhouettes of foliage. Their boots made soft impressions in the mud as they retraced their steps back to the rendezvous point. Each man carried the weight of the mission with a silent, burdened urgency that seemed to thicken the night air around them. As they approached the designated spot, the soft rustle of movement alerted Hawk to his team's presence, all converging with the stealth of wraiths sliding through the forest's embrace. The group formed a tight circle, faces dimly illuminated by the subtle glow of their wrist-mounted displays. "Report," Hawk commanded softly, his eyes flicking from one man to another, reading the tension in their postures as much as the anticipation in their eyes. "East wing clear, sir," one soldier reported, his voice a low murmur. "Found signs of recent activity, but no personnel." "West wing was similar," another added. "Looks like they cleared out fast, left most of their gear behind." Hawk nodded, processing the information. "We've got more than just tactical plans. There's something bigger at play. We need to figure out what these coordinates point to." He showed them the map briefly, each pair of eyes widening slightly as they took in the mysterious locations marked out. "We'll analyze this back at base," Hawk decided, turning his thoughts to their extraction. "Let's move out. Keep your guards up. They might have patrols out." The trek back was tense, every snapped twig or distant rustle magnifying under their heightened alertness. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees whispering secrets in the wind that Hawk wished he could decipher. As they neared the extraction point, a soft drizzle began to fall, the raindrops cool against their heated skin, mingling with the sweat and the grime of the mission. The dampness clung to them, clothes sticking uncomfortably to their bodies, as they silently acknowledged the cleansing nature of the rain, washing away some of the mission's grime, but not its grave implications. The shuttle loomed ahead, a dark shape against the night's canvas, its door opening with a quiet hiss as they approached. They boarded quickly, efficiently, each man's relief at leaving the oppressive darkness of the forest unspoken but palpable. As the shuttle lifted off, Hawk stood by the viewport, watching the receding trees blur into a dark mass below them. His reflection in the glass stared back at him, a ghostly overlay on the world slipping away beneath them. The mystery of the coordinates gnawed at him, a puzzle whose pieces were still scattered in shadow. "What are they planning?" he murmured to himself, the question hanging in the air like the echo of a thought, unanswered but charged with ominous potential. The shuttle broke through the cloud cover, ascending towards the stars that offered no guidance, only the silent, watchful glow of distant suns. The shuttle's ascent was a silent surge, cutting through the cloak of night toward the star-speckled oblivion above. Inside, the soft glow of instrument panels painted Hawk and his team in hues of blue and green, the light flickering across their stoic faces as they pondered the incomplete jigsaw they'd unearthed. Upon docking at the Galactic Alliance's starbase, the airlock hissed open, releasing a sterile, cool breath that swept over them like a welcome from an indifferent host. Hawk stepped out first, his boots echoing on the metallic flooring as they made their way to the debriefing room. The stark white corridors of the base were silent, the usual bustle subdued at this late hour, their footsteps a lonely percussion in the expansive halls of diplomacy and war. Inside the debriefing room, a large screen flickered to life as Hawk connected the data tablet. The map with the mysterious coordinates was displayed, each point pulsing softly on the screen like distant stars calling for exploration. "Commander Hawkins, what have we here?" General Vark's voice cut through the room's tension as he entered, his large frame filling the doorway. "Potential targets, or perhaps objectives of the insurgents," Hawk replied, his voice steady. "These coordinates don't match any known military or civilian sites. We're looking at something entirely off-grid." Vark approached, his eyes narrowing as he studied the map. "And you obtained this from the insurgent base? Impressive, yet troubling. This could suggest a larger operation than we anticipated." "Yes, sir. There's a depth to their strategy that we haven't seen before," Hawk acknowledged, his mind racing through the implications. He turned to face the general, his posture rigid with the gravity of their discovery. "We need to send recon teams to these coordinates. If we delay, we risk missing what they're planning." Vark nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the flickering screen. "I'll arrange for the reconnaissance. In the meantime, keep this under wraps. If word gets out, it could cause unnecessary panic or worse, tip off our adversaries." The room fell silent as the screen dimmed, leaving only the soft whir of the station's life support systems. A gentle, almost imperceptible breeze that circulated the recycled air, carrying with it the faintest scent of ionization from the electronic equipment. As Hawk and his team exited the debriefing room, the corridor seemed narrower than before, the walls pressing in with the weight of secrets newly burdened upon them. Each step was heavy with the knowledge of the dark tendrils of conspiracy threading through the galaxy, roots deep in unknown soils. Their return to the quarters was uneventful, yet each man was enveloped in his thoughts, the silence a dense veil that cloaked their worries and fears. The soft clatter of utensils and the occasional low murmur of conversation in the mess hall played a distant backdrop to Hawk's introspective meal. The food was tasteless, a bland sustenance that mirrored the stark reality they faced. Later, in the solitude of his room, Hawk sat reviewing the data again. The coordinates glowed on his handheld device, a constellation of danger on a digital sky. His finger paused over each point, a tactile connection to the enigma they embodied. As the station orbited silently through space, the stars outside his window offered no answers, only a silent vigil in the infinite dark. Hawk's night was restless, the stars outside his port window a silent audience to his concerns. Each gleaming point seemed to flicker with secrets, the darkness between them heavy with unspoken threats. Rising from his bunk, he paced the small confines of his quarters, the recycled air flat and tasteless against his tongue, devoid of the morning's sharpness, or any hint of the earthy aroma that once comforted him on terrestrial missions. As dawn's artificial light bled through the station, Hawk met his team in the briefing room, their faces etched with the same restless energy. The reconnaissance teams had been dispatched hours ago to the mysterious coordinates, the silence of their absence hanging heavily in the room. "Updates?" Hawk inquired, his voice cutting through the quiet with the precision of a scalpel. "Still waiting, sir," Sergeant Cole responded, his eyes fixed on the live feed from the recon drones that crept across the screen in real time, a slow crawl through uncharted territory. The room's atmosphere was punctuated by the soft clicks of keyboards and the distant muted echoes of the station's morning shift coming to life. Their own breaths seemed loud, each exhale a whisper of life in the sterile environment. Without warning, the main screen flickered, a feed coming alive with the drone's perspective swooping over an alien landscape. The terrain was rugged, desolate, with jagged rocks that cast long, gnarled shadows in the low light of a foreign sun. The drone hovered, then descended towards a structure partially obscured by a rock formation, a structure unmistakably artificial, its geometry harsh against the natural chaos around it. "There," Hawk pointed, his finger almost touching the cold screen. "Zoom in." The image enlarged, bringing the structure into clearer view. It was a facility of some kind, metallic surfaces dull under the alien sun, with no signs of movement to suggest current occupation. "Looks abandoned," Cole murmured, squinting at the display. "No heat signatures, no movement." "Or they knew we were coming," Hawk countered quietly, the possibility sending a ripple of tension through the room. His gaze remained locked on the screen, searching for any sign of the enemy they were chasing. "Prepare a team. We're going in," Hawk decided with resolve, turning from the screen to face his crew. "We need to know what they were planning here." The preparation was swift, the team efficient in their movements, each action a testament to their training and the urgency of their mission. The smell of lubricant was strong as they checked their weapons, the metallic tang mixing with the faint odor of sweat and determination. In the hangar, the transport ship's engines powered up, a low thrum that felt more like a vibration through the deck plates than a sound. Hawk led his team aboard, their boots clanging on the metal ramp, each step resonant with purpose. As the ship detached from the station, pulling away into the vastness of space, Hawk watched the stars blur into streaks of light. The mystery at those coordinates was a siren call, pulling them across the cosmic ocean into potentially hostile waters. What awaited them was unknown, a void in their understanding that was as black and fathomless as the space through which they traveled. The transport's descent to the alien surface was a silent glide, the ship slicing through the atmosphere like a blade through water. Outside, the landscape unfolded, a stark tableau of jagged rocks and sparse vegetation, all swathed in the cold light of a distant sun that cast sharp shadows and lent an eerie glow to the scene. Inside, Hawk and his team were hushed, their breaths a soft susurrus against the low whistle of the ship's life support systems, the only sounds breaking the concentrated silence. Each man was attuned to the mission, their senses sharpened by the anticipation of what awaited them on the ground. As the ship touched down with a muted thud, the hatch opened with a crisp hiss, revealing the barren expanse that stretched ominously before them. The air that rushed in was crisp, tinged with the acrid bite of alien minerals, and it crackled with the electric charge of an unexplored world. "Check your gear," Hawk commanded softly, his voice barely rising above the wind that swept in, carrying with it the faint, musty odor of decay. It was a reminder that this planet, while seemingly devoid of life, held secrets in its soil. The team filed out, their movements precise, each step on the alien terrain cautious yet determined. The ground crunched under their boots, a chorus of tiny echoes in the vast silence of the deserted landscape. Hawk led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon while his ears picked up the subtle shifts in the wind's song, a discordant melody that spoke of desolation and forgotten wars. His hand rested on the butt of his weapon, a constant companion that felt reassuringly solid against his palm. The structure they had seen from the drone feed loomed ahead, its outline more imposing up close, its metal surfaces dulled by years of exposure to the harsh elements. It stood like a silent sentinel, guarding the mysteries housed within its walls. "Visuals are clear, no immediate threats detected," Cole reported, his voice a low rumble that seemed to blend with the ambient noises of their alien surroundings. "Keep your eyes peeled and comms open," Hawk instructed, leading his team toward the structure. The entrance was unguarded, the door ajar, as if inviting them, or warning them, to stay away. Inside, the air was cooler, the silence more profound, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The corridors were lined with dust and debris, signs of abrupt abandonment, or perhaps a hasty evacuation. Each step raised a soft puff of dust, the particles dancing in the beams of their flashlights before settling back down into the shadows. They reached a central chamber, the walls lined with banks of dormant machinery, their purposes mysterious and manifold. Hawk approached a console, the screens dark, the chairs around it pushed back in disarray as if their occupants had left in a rush. "Power it up," Hawk directed, his fingers grazing the cold, smooth surface of the console. With a flicker, the screens came to life, illuminating the room with a pale blue light that cast ghostly shadows across their faces. Data streamed across the displays, cryptic codes and schematics that hinted at vast networks and deep-seated plans, the details of which were slowly beginning to coalesce into a picture more ominous than any of them had anticipated. "Sir, you need to see this," Cole called out, gesturing to a screen displaying a map dotted with symbols that were unmistakably military in nature. Hawk's gaze fixed on the map, a chill running down his spine as the realization dawned on him. The scale of what they were up against was far greater than any of them had imagined. This was no mere insurgent hideout. It was the epicenter of a potential war that could engulf entire star systems. As the implications of the data unveiled before them, Hawk felt a surge of urgency. The room was bathed in the glow from the console, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch ominously across the floor. Each display flickered with intelligence that spoke of a network much vaster than a simple insurgent group. It was a meticulously planned siege, poised to strike at the heart of the Galactic Alliance. "Get all this data back to command now," Hawk instructed Cole, his voice resonant in the still chamber. Cole nodded, rapidly transferring files to their secure server, his fingers a blur across the interface. The air was thick with the scent of old electronics, a hint of burnt insulation lingering, as if the machines spat out their secrets begrudgingly. The temperature in the room dropped as the ancient cooling systems struggled to life, combating the heat generated by their sudden activity. Hawk paced the room, his steps muffled by the thick dust that carpeted the floor. Each movement kicked up a musty smell, a reminder of the decay that had settled into this place. His mind raced, piecing together the potential strategies they might face, each scenario more daunting than the last. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling around the structure with ghostly wails. It seemed to echo the chaos that might soon be unleashed across the galaxy if they didn't act swiftly. Hawk peered out through a grimy window, noting the stirring of the sparse vegetation as it whipped in the tumultuous air, the sky a dark canvas threatening rain. "Sir, transmission secure and sent," Cole's voice cut through his contemplation. "I've also found something else." "What is it?" Hawk turned, watching as Cole pointed at a secondary screen where a live feed showed satellite images of troop movements at another location, movements that hadn't been launched by any known Galactic Alliance command. "It looks like they're already mobilizing," Cole added, his tone grave. "We need to intercept," Hawk decided instantly. "Prepare the ship." The team moved out, their exit from the facility swift, leaving the echoing silence of the deserted building behind. As they made their way back to their ship, the ground beneath them felt unstable, not from the terrain, but from the weight of the imminent threat hanging over them. Rain began to fall as they reached the ship, heavy drops that pelted the metal hull with a relentless patter. The sky, a tumult of dark clouds, seemed to press down upon them, mirroring the pressure that tightened around Hawk's chest. Once aboard, Hawk took to the pilot's seat, his hands steady despite the turmoil brewing both outside and in his thoughts. The engines roared to life, a vibrant thrust that shook the craft, propelling them back into the black abyss above. As the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, Hawk set their coordinates for the troop movement location. The silence of space enveloped them, a stark contrast to the storm they had left behind and the one they were flying into. "Everyone brace for a quick entry," Hawk announced over the ship's comms. "This isn't just about surveillance anymore. We're stepping into the fray." His last glance back at the planet showed the storm intensifying, a visual echo of the war they were rushing to meet head-on. The mystery of their enemy's plans was unraveling, but each thread pulled revealed a new layer of danger, drawing them deeper into the galactic quagmire. As the ship cleaved through the void, racing towards the coordinates of the mysterious troop movements, tension hung palpable among the team. Outside, the cosmos swirled in a silent ballet of stars and nebulae, their serene beauty belying the urgency of the mission. Inside the cockpit, Hawk's eyes were fixed on the forward screens, the distant stars pinpricks of calm in the vast blackness. "We're coming up on the target area," Hawk announced, his voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the outer reaches of the planet's atmosphere, the transition marked by a subtle shift in the vessel's vibrations. The atmosphere inside the ship grew thicker with anticipation. Each crew member was alert, their bodies tensed and ready for action, the air between them charged with the energy of impending conflict. The scent of recycled air mixed with the faint odor of sweat, a testament to the gravity of their undertaking. As the planet loomed closer, its surface a swirl of clouds and terrain rapidly clarifying into sharper focus, Hawk adjusted their descent trajectory. "Prepare for a hot drop," he instructed tersely, hands steady on the controls. The lower they got, the more turbulent the ride became. Wind sheared against the ship's hull, a howling adversary that fought against their intrusion. Hawk's expert piloting kept them on course, his jaw set in determination. Below them, the landscape was a tapestry of chaos, smoke billowing from scattered fires, the scarred earth evidence of recent heavy movements. Through breaks in the smoke, formations of troops could be glimpsed, their movements deliberate, orchestrated, yet seemingly in disarray from some unseen pressure. "Looks like we've caught them mid-operation," Cole noted, peering over a console. "Whatever they're planning, it's already in motion." Hawk nodded, his mind racing with tactics. "We disrupt their lines, create confusion, use their disorder to our advantage." The ship touched down behind a ridge, the earth beneath them crunching under the landing gear, a harsh welcome. They disembarked swiftly, the outside air hitting them with a blast of heat and the acrid tang of burning foliage. The ground was uneven, a mosaic of dirt and scorched grass, and each step kicked up a cloud of ash. The sound of distant artillery was a constant rumble, like thunder rolling over the hills. Hawk led his team forward, moving towards the sounds of conflict, their approach covered by the natural din of battle. As they neared the first cluster of enemy troops, Hawk signaled a halt, crouching low. The enemy was regrouping, their officers shouting orders that were carried on the wind, a cacophony of urgency and command. Hawk exchanged a look with his team. "On my mark," he whispered, the plan clear in his eyes. They nodded, understanding flashing between them like silent lightning. The ambush was swift, the team a fluid shadow that swept through the enemy ranks with precision. The clash was immediate, the sound of gunfire and clashing gear a sudden storm that broke the rhythm of the enemy's preparations. As they fought, Hawk was everywhere at once, his presence a driving force. The enemy faltered, their confusion evident as they scrambled to respond to the unexpected threat. In the midst of the chaos, a new sound pierced the air, a high-pitched whine, unnatural and out of place. Hawk's head snapped up, his senses honing in on the noise. Above the melee, the sky seemed to ripple, a visual distortion that grew with the strange sound. "What in the—" Hawk started, but the ground beneath them shook, cutting him off. Something big was coming, something that had remained unseen and unaccounted for in their plans. The mystery deepened, each moment unfolding into more questions as they braced for what was to come. As the ground vibrated beneath their feet, Hawk and his team steadied themselves against the tremors, their senses alert to the new threat. The mysterious whine crescendoed into a cacophony that resonated through the battlefield, disrupting the rhythm of gunfire and shouts. Above them, the sky seemed to split, revealing what appeared to be a massive ship descending with deliberate, menacing intent. "Their reinforcements?" Cole shouted over the din, his face etched with concern as he reloaded his weapon. Or something worse, Hawk replied, his eyes never leaving the behemoth that now cast a vast shadow over the field. The ship was unlike any they had encountered, sleek, dark, and utterly silent as it hovered, an ominous presence that seemed to suck the light from the surroundings. The air filled with a charged tension, the smell of ozone rising as energy weapons from the ship began to charge, their glow a stark contrast to the dark hull. The ground troops, momentarily faltering under the shadow of their own support, regrouped, their movements now hurried, desperate. Hawk gestured to his team, signaling a strategic withdrawal to the cover of a nearby copse of burnt-out trees. "Move! Cover and regroup," he ordered. As they moved, the earthy smell of charred wood and the sharp tang of scorched earth filled their senses, a stark reminder of the destruction that had already taken place. Once under cover, Hawk surveyed the area, his mind racing through their options. "We need to disable that ship, or we're all sitting ducks," he said tersely, examining the ship for any weak points. "Looks heavily armored, sir," Cole observed, peering through a scope. "But I might have something. See there?" He pointed to a section near the rear that appeared less fortified, possibly a maintenance bay or secondary access point. "Good eyes. We'll take it out. Cole, you and Jensen take left flank. Ramirez, you're with me. We need to be fast and silent." Hawk planned swiftly, his leadership calm yet forceful. The team split, moving with practiced stealth, blending into the smoky haze that the battlefield had become. The distant sounds of the ongoing battle were punctuated by the sharp hiss of the ship's weapons, discharging powerful blasts into the already ravaged landscape. Approaching the ship, Hawk felt the heat radiating from its hull, a stark contrast to the cold fear that tingled at the back of his neck. Each step closer raised the stakes, the acrid smell of ionization growing stronger, almost overwhelming. They reached the less fortified panel, and Cole set to work quickly, attaching explosive charges while Hawk kept watch. The tension was palpable, each second stretching out as they prepared to strike at the heart of the enemy's newfound advantage. "Charges set," Cole whispered, his voice barely audible over the whirring of his equipment. "Detonate on my mark," Hawk replied, his hand raised, ready to give the signal. Just as Hawk was about to drop his hand, a sharp, piercing screech tore through the air, freezing them in their tracks. From the shadow of the ship, a figure emerged, not a soldier, but something else, something that moved with an eerie, fluid grace, its form shimmering slightly as if not entirely solid. "Contact!" Hawk's warning was instinctual, his body tensed for conflict. The figure paused, tilting its head as if curious. Then, with a speed that belied its serene initial movements, it charged. The charge of the shimmering figure halted as abruptly as it had begun, its form blurring momentarily as if confused by Hawk's defensive posture. Hawk, Cole, Ramirez, and Jensen tightened their formation, weapons trained on the enigmatic entity, which now seemed less aggressive and more curious. "Stand down," Hawk commanded with a steady tone, his team lowering their weapons slightly but remaining alert. The figure stood still, its outline flickering like a flame in a draft, the setting sun casting an eerie glow that illuminated its contours in a ghostly light. "What are you?" Hawk ventured, his voice firm yet not hostile, attempting to gauge the intentions or nature of this unexpected anomaly. No verbal response came. Instead, the figure shifted, its form becoming slightly more defined, humanoid but fluid. A flicker of understanding seemed to pass through its features that suggested it was not entirely organic but perhaps synthetic or even holographic. Hawk took a cautious step forward. "We're not here to fight. We were defending ourselves," he explained, watching closely for any sign of aggression. The figure tilted its head, as if processing his words, then nodded slowly, the movement surprisingly human. Cole, keeping his voice low, leaned in. "Sir, if it's intelligent, maybe it can help us. It might know how to disable the ship." Hawk considered this, then addressed the figure again. "We need to stop that ship. Can you help us?" The figure paused, then gestured for them to follow. It led them around the ship's perimeter to a less visible panel near the base. It touched the panel, and with a hiss, the panel slid open, revealing a complex network of circuits and glowing conduits. The core, the figure indicated through gestures, pointing to a specific conduit that pulsed with light. Overload this, and the ship powers down. Cole quickly set up his equipment, connecting overload devices to the specified conduit. Charges are set for a controlled feedback loop. It should fry the system without external damage, he confirmed. Everyone fall back, Hawk ordered. They retreated to a safe distance, watching as the figure stayed by the panel, its hand resting on the conduit as if to steady it. Detonate in 3, 2, 1. Cole activated the device remotely. A bright flare of light burst from the panel, followed by a series of deep thuds that vibrated through the ground. The ship above them groaned, its lights flickering wildly before dimming as it lost power and began to descend slowly, controlled but unstoppable. The figure turned to them, a nod of acknowledgement in their direction before it faded completely, disappearing as mysteriously as it had appeared. "Let's move," Hawk said, the team quickly maneuvering to a vantage point to assess the outcome. As they watched the ship make a gradual, forced landing, Hawk's mind was already racing through the next steps. "We need to secure the ship, check for intel, and ensure no threats remain," he planned out loud. His team nodded in agreement, their previous tension replaced by a focused determination. As the dust settled around the now inert ship, the smell of scorched electronics hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the close call. Hawk surveyed the area, his senses sharp. The strategic shutdown of the enemy ship was a significant blow to their operations, but raised new questions about the mysterious figure's origins and motives. With the enemy ship grounded and its power systems disabled, Hawk's team moved in, their senses alert for any sign of counterattack or booby traps. The air was thick with the scent of ionized particles, which tingled in their nostrils as they approached the silent behemoth. The ground underfoot was a carpet of coarse, burnt debris, the remnants of the ship's descent, crunching softly with each careful step they took. The sky above was darkening, the light fading as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for their next move. "Ramirez, take point. Cole, keep an eye on R6. Jensen, you're with me," Hawk directed, his voice low but clear, cutting through the quiet tension that enveloped them. As they neared the ship, its massive hull loomed like a fallen giant. The metal was still warm to the touch, the heat radiating off it in waves that could be felt even through their gloves, a stark contrast to the cool evening air. Ramirez approached the hatch, his scanner in hand. "No electronic locks active, sir. It's open," he reported, pulling the heavy door with a grunt. It moved with a reluctant groan, revealing the dimly lit corridors of the ship. They entered, lights flickering on their tactical vests, casting eerie shadows against the narrow walls. The interior was stark, utilitarian, with panels of blinking lights and switches that were now mostly dark. The smell of overheated metal and electrical burn was stronger inside, mingling with a less identifiable odor that was faintly organic, unsettling. Hawk led the way, his eyes scanning every corner. "Visual check on every compartment. We don't know what we might find here." As they progressed, the ship was eerily quiet, the only sounds their own movements and the occasional creak of the cooling metal structure. Each room they cleared added to the tension, a growing realization of the ship's secrets just out of reach. In the central command room, they found the ship's logs, active consoles still running on auxiliary power. Cole quickly interfaced with the system, downloading data while Hawk watched the doors. "Got something," Cole eventually broke the silence. "Looks like this wasn't just a support craft. Records show it was a key node in a larger network. They've been coordinating attacks across sectors from here." Hawk processed this information, his mind already shifting to countermeasures. "Can you trace the network?" Working swiftly, Cole nodded. "I can. It's going to take some time to decrypt, but I should be able to pull some coordinates." "Good. Let's blow this thing and get the hell out before they realize what we've done," Hawk decided, his strategic mind mapping out their swift retreat. The team rigged the ship with explosives, ensuring the destruction of any remaining data that could be used against them. As they made their way out, the fading light from the ship cast long shadows across the rugged terrain, painting their retreat in strokes of gray and black. Once at a safe distance, Hawk gave the signal, and the night lit up as the ship erupted in a cascade of fire and debris, a definitive end to its reign of coordination. The blast was a silent promise in the vacuum of space, felt more as a series of vibrations through the ground than heard. As the echoes of the explosion died down, Hawk looked back at the smoldering wreckage, a cold satisfaction in his eyes. "Let's move out. We've got a network to dismantle," he said, turning his gaze to the stars, where their real battle awaited. Under the cover of darkness, Hawk and his team made their way back to their vessel, the remnants of the enemy ship smoldering behind them like a fallen monument to their foes' overconfidence. The air was crisp, carrying with it the bitter scent of charred metal and the electric charge of victory tingling against their skin. As they boarded their craft, the cabin was silent, each member of the team lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the significance of their triumph. Hawk settled into the pilot's seat, his fingers brushing over the controls with a practiced ease that spoke of countless similar missions, though none quite like this. "Coordinates set for the Galactic Alliance Command," Hawk announced, his voice cutting through the silence like a beacon. "Let's go home." The journey back was swift, the stars streaking past in blurs of light as they sped through the cosmos. The tension that had gripped them began to ebb, replaced by a growing sense of accomplishment. They had intercepted and neutralized a major threat, a feat that would ripple through the galaxies. As they approached the command station, Hawk opened a channel, his voice resonating with the weight of their success. "Command, this is Hawk. Mission accomplished. The threat has been neutralized, and we have retrieved critical data on enemy operations." The response was immediate, a mixture of relief and commendation. "Understood, Commander. Prepare for debriefing upon arrival. Congratulations on a job well done." The craft docked smoothly, and as the hatch opened, Hawk led his team down the gangway, where they were met with the bustling activity of the command center. Officers and personnel stopped, turning to acknowledge their return, the air thick with the electric buzz of subdued celebration and respect. General Vark approached, his expression one of grudging admiration. "Hawkins, your team has done the impossible. You've not only saved countless lives, but also demonstrated the strength and cunning that the Galactic Alliance underestimated in Earth's forces." Hawk nodded, his gaze steady. "We may be the underdogs in this galaxy, General, but we have teeth, and when pushed, we bite back." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, the sentiment resonating deeply. "In light of your success," Vark continued, "I am recommending your team for the Galactic Valor Award. What you've achieved goes beyond the call of duty. It's a testament to human fortitude and ingenuity." As the team was led through the throng of clapping and cheering officers, Hawk felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for his team and for Earth. They had shown that in the face of galactic adversity, humanity was not just a participant, but a formidable force. Later, standing before the assembled masses of the command center, Hawk gave a brief but powerful speech. "Today, we didn't just carry out a mission, we delivered a message. Earth may be new to the interstellar stage, but we are not to be underestimated. We stand ready to defend our place in this galaxy, alongside our allies. Together, we are stronger. Together, we will shape the future." The applause that followed was not just for Hawk or his team. It was for the spirit they represented, a spirit that resonated with the very heart of the human-forged galactic narrative they were all part of. As the cheers echoed through the hall, Hawk knew this was but the beginning. Humanity had much to offer, and the galaxy was watching. As the echoes of applause slowly subsided, Commander Hawk and his team exited the main assembly hall of the Galactic Command Station. The hallway was dimly lit, the soft lights casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out behind them, like echoes of their recent actions now etched into the annals of interstellar history. Their boots clicked softly on the polished metal floor, a rhythmic sound that punctuated the otherwise silent passage. Hawk's mind replayed the mission, each decision and action crystallizing into a clearer understanding of the pivotal role they had played. "Sir," Cole spoke up, breaking the silence as they neared the debriefing room, "do you think they'll think twice now before underestimating us again?" Hawk stopped, turning to face his team. His gaze lingered on each man, his expression one of solemn pride. "They'll have to," he finally said. "We didn't just complete a mission. We changed perceptions. And that's the first step in changing the galaxy's understanding of what Earth can contribute." The team nodded, their faces reflecting a mixture of fatigue and satisfaction. They were not just soldiers who had executed commands. They were pioneers who had ventured into unknown territories, both literal and metaphorical, and emerged victorious. Inside the debriefing room, the atmosphere was starkly professional. Maps and screens lined the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. Hawk stood before them, his back straight, as he began the formal debrief. "Operationally, we've not only neutralized a significant threat, but also gathered intel that will prevent future conflicts and save lives," Hawk reported, his voice steady, echoing slightly in the quiet room. "Strategically, we've demonstrated that Earth's forces are an asset not just to be acknowledged, but relied upon." General Vark, who had joined them quietly, nodded in agreement. "Your actions have spoken louder than any diplomatic negotiation could. You've earned Earth a seat at the table, Commander." As the meeting concluded, Hawk and his team filed out, returning to their quarters. The station seemed to hum with a barely contained energy as news of their success spread, altering the rhythm of daily operations. In his quarters, Hawk stood at his window, looking out at the vastness of space. Stars twinkled back at him, no longer just points of light but destinations, arenas of potential encounters and collaborations. Later, at a small, informal gathering in the mess hall, Hawk raised his glass in a toast. "To the team," he said, his voice filled with an earnest gravity. "Today we celebrated not just a victory for Earth, but for every species willing to stand up against oppression and threat. May this be a reminder: never underestimate the underdog." The team clinked glasses, their laughter and camaraderie filling the room, a sound more triumphant than any medal or award. Outside, the galaxy spun on, indifferent, yet subtly changed. Earth had proven itself not merely a survivor, but a formidable player in the cosmic game. And as Hawk looked around at his team, his friends, he knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had much to offer, and perhaps more importantly, much to learn. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, the galactic soldiers who had once laughed at Earth's special forces would now think twice, knowing that when pushed, Earth could push back, not just with strength, but with strategy and heart.